actor Don Cheadle.
Thanks. I prefer black-dervist, but that's all right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Michael. And thank you to the organizers of the Sustainable Operations Summit for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. This subject matter is near and dear to my heart, and I really count myself lucky to have been asked to grace the same stage as many who stood here this week championing these causes, not least of which being President Clinton, who has on more than one occasion provided a willing ear to my neophyte questions. Is it neophytic? Anybody smart out there? But before I begin my rousing speech, which will no doubt inspire you beyond all measure and send you out of here with fire in your bellies and walking on air, I have a confession to make. As late as 2 weeks ago, I almost skipped out on this whole thing. I don't know if any of you guys know this, but I'm an actor, as Michael said. And lately, my work has required me to travel quite a bit more than I'd prefer, which is none at all. Yeah, I'm kind of a homebody by nature, intermittent family vacations being the only other things that usually can convince me to leave the house. But 2 years ago, the Secretary General tapped me on the shoulder and requested that I join the ranks of the UN. He wasn't exactly Don Corleone, and it wasn't exactly the Godfather, but I realized this was an offer that I better not refuse. Now, of course, I was fully aware that when I agreed to be the United Nations Goodwill Ambassador, that it might require that I interface with some of the nations with which we hope to be united in goodwill. But I was thinking like iChat, Skype, tweets, ways to reduce my carbon footprint while increasing my carbon form imprint on my couch. And besides, I've been in boogie nights and Crash, Traffic, Hotel Rwanda, Ocean's 11, Sunday night Showtime, 10 p.m. Eastern Saturn Channel, House of Lies. Wasn't I already doing enough? But then three things popped into my head pretty quickly. One, all those thoughts are stupid. And two and three were the daughters that were sitting next to me on that couch. 17 years ago, I became a dad for the first time. And as my mother so eloquently put it to me, my carefree days were over. Not my good days. She said I'd have plenty of those, but my carefree days, zero. And there'd been a shift in the matrix. There was a temporal change that dictated that someone other than Don Cheadle would be first considered when the big decisions in life came up. 2 years later, little sister arrived, and the 1-2 punch of responsibility sort of hurtled my thoughts far into the future. I was thinking of high school and then dating, college, grandkids. And all of a sudden, I was trying to picture the world in 2020, 2030, 2040. Dates that before only sounded like a setting for some cinematic, futuristic foray, of which I hope to be starring in. Featuring some advanced alien race, fighting humanity for the survival on the planet. But 2020 is only 8 years away. My daughters will be 25 and 23, fully embarked on their journeys as adults. Now, let's face it, 2020 is tomorrow. And as I scan the environmental landscape today, it's not futuristic aliens that we're battling, but rather an intransigent mindset that for the most part adheres to slow-to-change business-as-usual practices, irrespective of the impacts growing in both rate and scope. And I'm no rush to be a grandfather here, people, but I can't help but extrapolate just one generation further, facing the prospect that if nothing changes, my kids' kids will be growing up smack dab in the middle of a planet that's trending to be 8 to 10 billion people strong. With everybody gobbling up resources and making waste at an untenable rate. Now, by then, of course, I believe that abject necessity will dictate that we employ many aggressive techniques to combat the erosion, of our fragile ecosystems, and there'll be a mad rush to address the challenges faced by our inexhaustible needs for water and clean energy. I mean, we humans are nothing if not motivated by impending doom. But do we need to really wait that long to get on the green train? And we can rest assured that those most egregiously affected by this drain will be those that are most egregiously affected today, the poor and disenfranchised. People fighting just to get by, that can't really make choices based on sustainability or planetary stewardship. They're just trying to worry about feeding their families. So what do we do? How do we in this room say that the sky is falling without getting, chicken little stares? Did I mention that I was an actor? In 2004, I was in a film called Hotel Rwanda, which focused on one man and his family's plight against the backdrop of genocide. It was the toughest shoot I've ever loved, and I was fortunate enough to garner not only awards attention, but also the attention of two congressmen, Ed Royce and the recently departed Donald Payne. These are men from opposite sides of the aisle. They were both serving on the Africa Subcommittee, and they were both interested in raising awareness and eventual support for relief efforts in Darfur region of Sudan. The film struck a chord in them, and they reached out to me to aid in these efforts. So I traveled to the region with a congressional delegation along with John Prendergast and Paul Rusesabagina, whom I portrayed in the film. And we spent several days in and around the area with the African Union. It was an incredible, life-altering experience for me. But then returning to the States, I sort of found myself on unsteady footing, grappling with the abyss between the comfort and security that I enjoyed at home versus the condition of those that I had just broken bread with who were suffering greatly 30,000 miles away. So I asked the question, what can I do? And the answers came back to me in a flood. And it wasn't long before I was joining with old friends and new strangers on campuses and lecture halls, on Capitol Hill, churches, television studios, movie sets, anywhere that a conversation or a brainstorm session could break out. All of us trying to work this problem from our respective angles, different walks of life, bringing whatever we had to bear on it. I was thankfully pulled into the waters of activism and advocacy, and I was happy to contribute, some way, add my light to the sum of light. And we saw the needle move. We saw divestment legislation signed, millions of dollars were raised in support of the NGOs working in the area. High-level dignitaries were engaged, war criminals were named at The Hague. But my proudest moment may have been being called to the Senate to testify about my experiences in the region, and having caught the attention of the State Department, being requested to stop by to see Secretary Condoleezza Rice, who promptly informed me that she had heard the noise that we in the activist community were making about President Bush's responsibility, or lack thereof, his lack of action on the genocide, and our demands that he do more. After her polite recitative about the administration's work in Africa, the UN's ineffectualness, and a really lovely glass of spring water, she promptly told me in no uncertain terms that we all needed to shut up. And that's when I knew we were really making headway. So many times along the journey, however, I wondered if it was enough. I still do. And today we wait and watch to see if this tenuous peace that's been formed between the North and the South will hold, or if it will unravel as it's threatening, which would potentially dwarf the atrocity in Sudan, in Darfur rather. Untold numbers will be killed, wounded, millions of people most likely will be displaced, with the idea of returning home just a fantasy for them. When I give in to that cynicism, part of me says if that comes to pass, then we've definitely failed, and all of this work was for nothing, and it will be a great tragedy. But then I force myself to remember that just because everything hasn't changed doesn't mean that nothing has, and that 3 steps forward and 2 steps back is still a net gain. And then all those platitudes about staying the course and that nothing worth doing is easy, and they just come back again and again and again. And I share these stories with you not to really highlight anything particularly special that I've done, but just to share that how one person looking for answers was able to find many people who are doing the same. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir in this room because you all certainly have stories of your own about finding strength in numbers and the necessity of organizing with like-minded, goal-oriented individuals, and the importance of persistence. But perhaps there's another component that's just as necessary for the message we're trying to get across to carry the day. and that's storytelling. We can never underestimate the power of a good story well told. Everybody here has examples from their lives when time stood still as they sat rapt on the edge of their seat, a fascinating tale unfolding before them. The ending perhaps anticipated, but still unknown. Totally giving over to the experience, not wanting it to end. I mean, you're probably all having that experience right this very moment. But these moments can help to shape not only our opinions, but our behavior as well. These moments launch us into new areas of our lives that we'd never before imagined and put us on paths to intersect with individuals who wind up being incredibly important to us as we move forward and defining our directions as our directions define us. Yesterday, I spoke at an Envision event hosted by the Ford Foundation, the United Nations, and IFP. And over the past 2 days, many people who come from a multitude of disciplines, filmmakers, authors, scientists, musicians, environmentalists, doctors, all came together to try to find a way to give voice to the issues we know will ultimately take center stage, invited or not. Everyone looking for the most compelling way to tell the stories that can galvanize interest and get us all pulling in the same direction towards selfishly protecting the one thing that really unites us all, and that's this big blue ball. They stress the fact that this is not about politics, bias, or partisanship, but rather about learning to live in concert with our world and leaving things better for those who come after us. We realize, however, that we're fighting somewhat of an uphill battle. We fight against stories being told about commerce and jobs, wealth and security, about a running narrative of doubt and skepticism from some who, without the benefit of facts, have determined that what we posit is tantamount to heresy. The gauntlet's thrown down, the challenge defined. We have to tell better stories, more compelling stories, more undeniable stories, stories that take all form and shape, from the informative to the personal, serious and or absurd. Anybody, Captain Planet? Anybody? Cautionary, hopeful, hammering at the fissure from every possible angle until it cracks undeniably open. Now, I've been fortunate over the past several years to be involved with projects that have taken on thoughtful subject matter and have really taken me to places that I couldn't have imagined and influenced the ways in which I look at life. And the writers and directors, actors, producers I've worked with, they've echoed the same sentiment. If you're open to it, the work gets inside of you in the best of ways and enlarges your capacity for more capacity. It sensitizes your tentacles like a sea anemone, and you sit there with your fingers out, waiting for that next morsel to come by and grab it and devour it. Stories have the magical power to do that. I think it would behoove the storytellers of today to bunker down with you who are doing the important work and see if we can extend our collective tomorrows and crack this code, so to speak. Find the proper balance of shock, awe, and entertainment that will have people looking to see how they can make changes in their personal lives and support the leaders who are endeavoring to bring us into a greener 21st century. And when we create this mega piece, this blockbuster story, it should be anchored by a charismatic 40-something actor/activist. Race isn't specific. If he's black, that's cool. So it reaches the largest audience possible. And it should be very expensive, with a huge profit participation back in for the lead, so that others who follow in his footsteps can be inspired to do the same. But seriously, I come here to be among you guys today as a storyteller. And I'm asking the question again, how do we get these stories across? How best can we do this? How can we carry this message forward, cut through the din of doubt, combat the inertia and get people to pay attention? I believe we can find those answers, and I look forward to connecting with many of you here today so that we can do so. I'm inspired by your work. I applaud your efforts to bring us all into a future that we can really be proud of. Because at the end of the day, I believe people want to do the right thing once they know what it is. And, we want to break this cycle of produce, consume, waste. It's undeniably the right thing. Shifting a percentage of our GDP to develop and supporting green technologies, it's the right thing. Weaning ourselves off oil, right thing. Protecting the air, fisheries, forests, the right thing. So I look forward to seeing if we can't all get together and figure out how to tell the right story. And I thank you for listening to mine. Thank you.